Hello everyone, and welcome back to another Wild Discoveries vlog, the really fun series where I show you guys some of the wildlife that I am lucky enough to stumble on, including quite a bit of it that happens to be in my own backyard. And if you guys remember last week, I showed you a pair of half-grown fawns who were absolutely adorable and got really close to my deck while they searched for all the acorns in my backyard. And they were not the only deer that I have actually seen recently in my backyard here in Michigan. And just to remind you guys, all of the deer I am seeing, it feels like there's just herds of them coming through this big, thick, beautiful forest from what you see, right? But remember, I actually live right in the middle of a fairly large city, so this truly just is another example of some of the amazing wildlife that you could probably see yourselves if you just took the time to kind of peek out your window and keep your eyes wide open. Believe it or not, these deer were really hard for me to see, even though we're zoomed in like this and you can see them frolicking around in the leaf litter. They blended in with the trees and the leaves really well, especially because the older deer, the adult female does who were over there with their half-grown fawns frolicking around their feet, were starting to get in their darker coat coloring, which I thought was so fascinating. You can definitely see it on this mama doe who suddenly realized that even though I was really far away, I had my eyes on them. And you can see how she has this dark brown coloring going on top of all of this red fur, and that's actually her fall or autumn coat that she's putting on so that she can blend in with the trees a little bit better, and it worked really well. One of the things that really surprised me about seeing the deer up close was just how big they were. I have seen deer in person before, but it just really took me back to see these white-tailed deer in my backyard and to realize that even the little frolicking fawns were not as small as I kind of remembered them being. They are definitely not like little goat-sized and frolicking around your knee. The female doe were actually probably taller than I was, very easily, and they were huge. They were very large creatures, and I was really impressed with just how big they were, and I was impressed with how hard it was to see them. You wouldn't think with an animal this large it would be very difficult for me to see them in my backyard, but they actually blended in really well with the trees, especially with that really nice darker autumn coat that the does were starting to put on. The fawns themselves were actually transitioning out of their early fawn coat where they still had their little spots and dots to help them blend in with those spring and summer grasses, and they were transitioning into their adult coloring, and I thought it was so much fun to still be able just to very faintly make out the tiny little spots and stripes of their fawn coloring on their back. It was really fun to kind of see them caught in between this transition like awkward little teenagers. And speaking of awkward, it was really funny to me to see just how covered the deer were with different kinds of seed stickaburs, which is what I usually just call the types of seeds that have those grasping little hooks that allow the seed pods to catch on to the fur or the clothes of passing animals or humans and spread themselves through the forest by kind of hitching a ride until the animal either grooms the seeds off or they fall off on their own. It's an excellent way to disperse your seeds, but I really didn't expect to see the fawns just look like they sat in a whole bunch of seed stickaburs and they were just covered with it. I think that it's because it's harder for them to reach around and groom at the back of their legs, but they really did just look so much more awkward because not only were they transitioning from these cute little spots and dots into this darker coat color and kind of looking a bit scruffy for it, but then their fur was just absolutely covered in seeds, and it just made for a really adorable picture, especially because the fawns every now and then would get really excited and just take off like a rocket and bound around in big circles. The entire time the does would just ignore them, and they would stick their little tail up in the air with the big white flag, the white fur that they have on the bottom of their tail that gives the white-tailed deer their name, and just run around in circles, really flighty, scruffy, seed-covered little things, and they were just adorable. And like I mentioned, you guys, I am not in the middle of the countryside. I am in a fairly large city. So you may be wondering, just what are all these deer doing in my backyard? And the answer is acorns. Like I mentioned last week, our black oak trees in our backyard are having an absolutely abundant bounty of acorns this year. And it is attracting all manner of wildlife that I have not seen in my backyard to our doorstep so that they can eat all of the bounty. And we've had these beautiful does, we've had these adorable fawns, and we've even had some bachelor herds of bucks, which really surprised me. If I was shocked looking out the window and seeing fawns and does, I was really shocked when I have been looking out my window and seeing some beautiful bucks, many of whom still have the velvet on their antlers, digging around my yard looking for acorns and eagerly eating all of the oak leaves. I don't know if the poor oak saplings in our backyard are going to make it to grow up to be as big as their parents, but I have to admit it has been a really fun treat to see such large wildlife animals right in my own backyard.